Dr. Surjit, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. To give again a very brief, we introduced you already to the participants.
Okay, fine,
To
fine. That's
again
fine.
briefly,
We'll start.
yeah.
We'll start directly.
Dr. Sujit will be talking about the food systems for nutrition and value chains and what are the role of rural institutions. I will hand it over to Dr. Surjit, but before that, there are a few notices that I would like the participants to follow. First of all, do not unmute yourself. We repeatedly say this, but every day this happens because the session is being recorded and we want to share it with you. So please do not unmute yourself unless prompted, unless invited. Do not suddenly start your video and start sharing it because then the session gets disturbed. And will be time when Dr. Surjit prompts us. We will post the poll. We will post the questionnaire. Take part in it because the poll will be open only for a very short window and then it will close and you will not be able to take part in it. So with that, I will hand over the session to Dr. Surjit. Sir, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Rujira. Can I share my screen? Am I audible to everyone?
Yes,
is it clear?
you're very clear.
Yeah. So I think somebody is sharing screen.
Praveen, can you make Dr. Vikraman a presenter?
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
Yeah.
So I click on this open share tray, right? Share.
Yes, Praveen will give you the presenter status and then active it for you.
Yeah. So by the time we load the presentations, good afternoon once again to all, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to all of you. I'm sure I understand this is the third day of the training program, and then already you might have had got introduced to the development aspects of nutrition. How is it okay now?
Yes, you are audible, Sujit. Yeah, participants who are speaking and unmuting, this is a request, please don't do it. We are going to remove you from the meeting if you constantly keep unmuting yourself. We will have no choice. So please don't unmute yourself.
So can you see the slides?
Yes, we can see the slide.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So I have organized my talk around the farming system for nutrition and value chains. What is the role of rural institutions? Largely, I would like to focus on three major things. The first thing will be, although you might have been introduced to, I would like to reiterate the development challenge with respect to nutrition. Why nutrition is a development challenge, and it's a very serious development challenge. It's not very evident directly, but then it's going to hamper our journey in the development process in the long term. Second, I'll talk about why agriculture is, how do agriculture play rather than in addition to its role as supplier of food, provider of food, how is agriculture important in determining the various nutritional outcomes? How what are the pathways through which agriculture influences various outcomes in the nutritional value chain, and what is the nutritional value chain? I'll take one example of a state, the state of Telangana, and explain how are nutritional value chains mapped, and then what are the major value chain actors in the nutritional value chain, and then how are institutions going to play an important role in defining the activities and interventions and interlinkages between these various actors, and that can result in a synergy and then help in resulting better nutritional outcomes. In addition to our efforts, policies, programs, and activities which we are carrying out under the leadership of various ministries of the state, of non-government organization, various national and international agencies. So I'll start with nutrition as a development challenge. Yeah. So to start with, what are the global nutrition challenges? I mean, what are the major nutrition problems with respect to nutrition which we face? Roughly around 2 billion people face the issue of micronutrient deficiency, largely iron and vitamin A. I mean, you can imagine 2 billion in when you imagine that against the population of India, which is around 1.3 to 1.35 billion population. So around 2 billion, more than that, more than a country's population is affected by malnutrition. We have 155 million children who are stunted. Unfortunately, children are the major sufferers of this, the whole nutrition value chain. Globally, 155 million children are stunted. 52 million children are wasted. I'm assuming all of you might have at some point of time heard about the concepts of stunting, wasting, height by age, height for weight, and all. About 45 million are underweight, and then in addition to that, we have another challenge of 2 billion adults who are overweight or obese. That is the other side of the nutrition challenge. I mean, 2 billion are overweight or obese. In addition to undernutrition, we have issues with malnutrition or unbalanced nutrition, which results in overweight or obesity. So we have problems with respect to the nutrition front on both ends, undernutrition as well as unbalanced or overnutrition. And if you look at globally, 88% of the countries face a serious burden of at least 2 or 3 of these various forms of malnutrition, which I have spoken about stunting, about wasting, micronutrient deficiency, and obesity, overweight or obesity. So if you take these 4 or 5 categories of malnutrition, 88% of the countries globally face any 2 or 3 of these. So that reveals the seriousness of the issue of with respect to nutrition. So I'm sure all of you might have heard about the double burden of nutrition, which is largely being talked about in developing country context. We have 41 million children who are overweight. As I was mentioning about the other side of the nutrition challenge, on the one hand, we have issues with respect to undernutrition. I mean, it could be because unavailability of food, less access to food. Less unfavorable condition which results in the utilization of the food we are consuming, which badly affect which affects in a very bad way the way in which the food we consume are being utilized. For example, if there is a severe disease burden, if there is severe deterioration in the quality of water, hygiene and sanitation situation, it all will affect the utilization of the food, whatever available food we are consuming. So we have around 41 million children who are overweight and 161 million children underweight. Okay, two sides of the same coin. And then what we call as double burden of nutrition is, on the one side, we have undernutrition, characterized by wasting, the figures for which I was giving out earlier, wasting, stunting, and micronutrient deficiency. We have several types of micronutrient deficiency, the larger ones being, the prominent ones being iron and vitamin A deficiency. Your deficiency with respect to zinc, vitamin C, and B12. So we have undernutrition, wasting, stunting, and micronutrient deficiency on the one end of the spectrum, and the other end of the spectrum is the larger issue with overweight and obesity. Overweight can be due to larger consumption as well as having a diet which is very unbalanced, which is very unbalanced in its carbohydrate, protein, micronutrient composition. So I think all of you should keep in mind this concept of double burden of nutrition. You know, some scholars classify it as a triple burden also. I mean, but larger the international nomenclature for these two categories of malnutrition is the double burden of nutrition. You know, we have undernutrition, which is characterized by wasting, stunting, and micronutrient deficiency, as well as overweight and obesity. So let's keep this in mind. You know, let's also look at what is the global distribution in terms of, you know, what is the global prevalence of malnutrition. You know, problems with respect to nutrition. You will see if you look at, you know, before going to the country level situation, if you look at globally, we see Asia is bearing the largest burden. You know, we are even bad when compared to Africa. I mean, of course, certain countries in Africa are severely affected, but if you, on an aggregate level, if you look at different continents, Asian continent face the more severest problem of with respect to you know, malnutrition levels. I mean, around 87 million children are stunted, 20 million are overweight, 36 million are, you know, wasted. So, and India is not bad, you know, within quotes, India is not bad with respect to numbers, being the second most populous country in the world, as well as even when compared to neighboring Asian countries, we are not, our position is not very comfortable, you know, because of a lot of issues which we'll discuss in the due course of presentation. So Asia faces a serious problem, you know, and we are in certain cases, we are very even worse than certain countries in Africa. So that should be kept in mind to digest the severity of this problem and the importance we should attribute to policies, programs, and activities in addressing this as a development challenge. Now, let's come to India. We have all of you might have heard about this National Family Health Survey, which started in 1992. We are almost completing 2.5 decades of National Family Health Survey, which gives a comprehensive data and estimates about the nutritional status, largely focusing on women and children across country for various states. Off late with NFHS 4 and 5, they have started giving district level estimates as well. It was the first NFHS was in 92, and then subsequently it was conducted every 5 years, except from NFHS 3. There is a 10-year gap between NFHS 3 and 4. Otherwise, it's conducted in every 5 years. So the last NFHS 4 was in 2015-16, of which we have the data. NFHS 5 is going on 18-19 with reference with 18-19. So we'll get to know the estimates maybe a year or two from here. So if you look at the NFHS 4 estimate, which is a recent estimates for 2015-16, and if you compare with the previous period, you know, with previous NFHS 3 is 2005-6. So within a 10-year period, if you compare between NFHS 3 and 4, we have some achievements in terms of, you know, reducing the levels of stunting among children of the age group less than 5. From 48% it has come down to 38. Whereas wasting, we have not so encouraging results. I mean, wasting have been increasing, which is not very encouraging. Underweight children under the age of 5, it has declined from 43% to 36%. I mean, the decline is not very substantial in terms of the absolute numbers, but then, you know, yeah, it's an indication that things are improving. But is it at a could it have been at a faster pace, or can we do something more to improve the the progress in nutritional achievements is another question. Okay, so basically slowly we are improving, but then substantial population, see 36% of the children under the age of 5 are underweight. Roughly you can say, it's roughly 50%. I mean, 36 is a big number in terms of percentage of children who are underweight. So that shows how serious the problem is. And if you look at the most simplest indicator is childhood mortality rate. I would like you to focus only under 5 mortality rate. Let's not look at infant mortality and neonatal mortality. If you look at the first blue bar, the dark blue bar, which basically indicates the under 5 mortality. From NFHS 1, it has declined from 109 per 1,000 live births. Under 5 mortality basically indicates how many children have died up to the age group of 5 among 1,000 live births. So it has declined from 109 to around 50. So we have substantial reduction in the last 2.5 decades. And similarly for each indicators, although at various levels, we have a slowly declining rates of mortality, particularly among children, which is also a good sign. But then the target with which we have to achieve are still higher. Roughly 30%. We lose 30 children in 1,000 live births. So that is still an area of concern. If you look at within the states, I have taken only one indicator, which is a roughly robust indicator of stunting among children under the age group of 5. The dark blue line horizontal bar indicates the national figure, which is around 38. That means 38 children out of 1,000 children born, 38 around 38% of the children under the age group 5 faces the problem are affected by stunting. That's a national figure. And if you look at the states which are higher than the national figure, around 8 states, states those who are up in that bar chart, Bihar, UP, Jharkhand, Meghalaya, Madhya Pradesh, Dadra and Nagar Haveli, which is a UT, Rajasthan, and Gujarat. These, I mean, at least 8 states are have higher incidence than the national average. Starting from Kerala at the lowest level, which is around 20. Kerala, Goa, having around 20% of the children under the age group who are stunted. So that shows the regional distribution of the nutritional status of children. So we have a global problem as well as a national problem. Within nation, it's not a uniform pattern. We have various degrees of malnutrition levels. Now, all of you might have heard about Sustainable Development Goals. We have 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which we plan to achieve in a 1.5 decade period from 2015. That's by 2030. The SDG 2, which is iconed as zero hunger, largely aims at to end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. So that's a goal number 2, SDG 2, which aims to end all forms of malnutrition. It's not saying reduction. It says end all forms of malnutrition. That's why we should reimagine the figures which I have spoken about a little while ago. About 38% of the children in India are stunted. And we are now in 2020. So in next 10 years, we are supposed to bring that to zero. In last 20 years, we have tried to bring it down from 60 to around 30. So now the remaining 38% which is remaining have to be eradicated, have to be removed, have to be brought out of the malnutrition indicator by 2030. So around 10 years from now. And all forms of malnutrition, including achieving by 2025 the internationally agreed targets on stunting and wasting. We had MDGs earlier, and then following the MDGs, we had World Health Organization has set out certain targets which has to be achieved by 2025, which was to halve the levels of stunting and wasting among children under 5 years of age by 2025. And then of late, several assessments have come out stating that we are way out of our targets of achieving our targets. I mean, basically realizing that we will not be achieving the targets which was set for 2025. We also should keep in mind when we think about our target of achieving zero hunger, which aims at ending all forms of malnutrition by 2030. Okay, so I mean, I am just flagging this issue to keep in mind the type of targets which we have set, type of targets which we have to achieve, and the difficulties in achieving that, because the track record already indicates that we have not achieved the previous set targets. So that gives an indication that the pace and ways at which we are working now is not enough to achieve the targets which are laid out by the SDGs in nutshell. Okay. Before we go into nutrition security, let me briefly outline about the elements of food security, because it has largely implications in setting the right background for achieving nutrition security. There are three important elements. The fourth element is added later on food security. When we say a population or is food secure, it ensures that there is, it should look at three major components. The food availability. I mean, sufficient quantity of food, sufficient quantity and quality of food should be available on a consistent basis. Food should be accessible. The population should have adequate resources or purchasing power to buy the appropriate food for a balanced and nutritious diet. So accessibility should be ensured. It's not enough that food is available. We all know from our experiences in history that even during Bengal famine, food availability was not an issue. Food was available, but then people did not have the purchasing power to access the food. So accessibility was an issue. The third dimension is food utilization. I mean, as I was discussing earlier, if food is available, food is accessible, but at the same time, if the environment is not conducive for proper absorption of the food or utilization of the food, certain literature uses the term utilization, certain literature uses absorption. So both indicate the same concept. An appropriate use of food-based, knowledge of basic nutrition and care. The most important being adequate water and sanitation. If those things are not available, even if food is accessible, even if we access food, the food which we consume will not result in better nutritional status of the population which consumes it, if it is not utilized properly. If there is no proper safe and good quality drinking water is not available, if sanitation levels are very bad, we will not be able to effectively utilize it. So availability, accessibility, and utilization are the three pillars of food security. We also of recent times, we also have the issue of vulnerability of exposure to various types of vulnerability. It can be due to natural calamities, it can be due to financial risk, all types of risk which will affect all the which will affect availability. It can be a climate change related risk which affects the production. Yield levels going down, temperature soaring high, and then the crop resulting in crop losses or reduction in crop yields, which badly affects food availability, which in turn affects accessibility as well as utilization. So Vulnerability cuts across these the concepts of availability, access, and utilization. So these are the four basic components of food security, which will have implications on nutrition security as well. I'll come to discuss each of these whenever there is situation arise. Are you able to follow? Is it fine?
I able to. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay, yeah, good.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you face any problem, you can type in the chat box, so that I can be aware of any issues. If you're not able to hear, or if you want to explain some concept again, please type in the chat box so that I'll come to know about it. Okay, yeah. So we discussed about, so when we discuss farming system for nutrition as well as the value chains, we will be looking at these farming systems as well as the value chain in terms of its impact or its implication on these three major components of food security, of how is it impacting food availability, how is it influencing food access to food, the populations or the households or the individuals' access to food, and how is it impacting the food utilization pattern of individuals or the population, or of different age group, women and children, adults, whatever. Okay, now coming to the second part of the presentation. So we know why nutrition is a development challenge, what is the magnitude of the issue of malnutrition, which all regions are severely impacted by higher incidence of malnutrition levels, what are all the reasons behind it, and how have we progressed, how India has progressed in terms of nutritional status of its population since we started measuring at a larger scale 2.5 decades before starting from the National Family Health Survey. Now in the second part, and we also discussed about the various, the most important components of food security, which is food availability, accessibility, utilization, and vulnerability, encompassing across cutting across the three other components. We also now coming to the second part of the presentations, where what role do agriculture, how in what all ways do agriculture influences our nutritional outcomes or nutritional status. And after discussing that, we'll come to discuss about the current status of the nutritional value chains, what are the various actors in it, and then how various rural institutions are going to influence. As RD professional, rural development professionals, you might be engaged with different rural institutions at the local level. So how are they going to influence this linkages between agriculture and nutrition? So we all know, more than 50% of the population in rural areas depends on agriculture for livelihoods. Although the GDP from agriculture has been declining, starting from 50 to 60%, now it's almost 14% of the GDP. This year, the first quarter of GDP figures have come, and you might have noticed the only sector which has some positive growth is agriculture sector. All other sectors, your manufacturing, your service sector, everything has grown negatively. That means there has been a huge slide in production in those sectors, whereas agriculture has registered a positive growth. So 60% of the population, although the value added is less, 60% directly or indirectly are dependent on agriculture. And the nature and characteristics of the agriculture production system, what it produces, how it produces, the frequency of production, the intensity of cropping pattern, the yield levels, productivity, all these issues plays a major role in defining the food and nutrition security, directly as well as indirectly. Directly in terms of impacting food availability. I mean, if you have low productivity, it affects availability, but at the same time, low productivity eats into the household's income as well. If you suffer losses from agriculture, your purchasing power gets cut off, gets reduced, which will have implications on your consumption levels, which will ultimately affect the nutritional outcome of the individual, household, state, district, state, and the nation. Okay. So the nature and characteristics of agriculture production systems, what crop you grow, is it cereals or is it commercial crops, is it plantation crop, is it crops like horticulture crops, is it vegetables, all these things will have direct and indirect impact on the food and nutrition security of the population. And several studies have shown that there is a clear disconnect as of now which exists between the agriculture production and the nutrition, and that is a major constraint in why we have not been able to achieve a remarkable progress in improving our nutritional status, or remarkable achievements in cutting down the malnutrition levels. We are very slow in achieving that. The major reason behind is what research studies have, several studies have cited, is the agriculture nutrition disconnect. There is a very clear disconnect in the linkages between agriculture sector and the nutritional activities. So what are these? We'll come to discuss in the subsequent sections. Now, when you say agriculture nutrition disconnect, we have several activities, several programs, several policies which tries to address the malnutrition levels in the country. Because it severely hampers the development process, we need to address that as an issue. So if you look at the various factors which affects nutrition levels, we can classify the two. We can classify it as a demand side factors and supply side factors. If you look at the demand side factors, for example, awareness level, nutrition literacy, we demand or we consume a well-balanced, nutritious diet, well-balanced in all components, the right proportion of proteins, carbohydrates, micronutrients, as well as other minerals. We will consume only when we are aware about it. Only we have knowledge about the influence of each component of food in it. Only we are convinced about the importance of a diversified diet. Right. So nutrition literacy is an important factor which influences the demand for a balanced and nutritious food. That is one. Second important element is the purchasing power. I mean, however we know, whatever be the nutrition literacy we have, unless it is backed by purchasing power, we'll not be able to access a diversified, well-balanced diet. And the price of various food items also play a major role in that. So availability backed by purchasing power will influence the demand for a nutritious food. There are several other socioeconomic factors also which influence the demand side of it. Let's look at the supply side. What is available? Food should be available. That's a priority of the state to make food available. To make all types of food available so that can I continue?
Yeah, please continue, Sujit.
Yeah. So so from the supply side, food availability, sufficient food with the right diversity of food should be available so that the population can have access to it. That is largely determined by the programs and policies for agriculture production. You should have a right quantity of cereals as well as pulses, which are a major source of protein. So if there is a decline, which we faced a few years back, 5 or 6 years back, we had a severe issue with respect to availability of pulses in the country. Largely red gram, the production of pulses have come down, and then we had to import from neighboring countries, as well as even we had import from Australia, other countries in the semi-arid regions. So availability is an issue. Then coming to supply side factors, we also have to take care of the enabling environment, which we were discussing earlier about the factors influencing utilization of the food. It is also important to ensure that safe and good quality drinking water is available. The disease burden is kept on check. Proper sanitation and health and hygiene conditions are ensured. So that the utilization or absorption of food takes place in the right sense, in the right manner, and will result in a better nutritional status of the population. So we have the demand side factors and supply side factors. And if you look at the policies and programs for addressing malnutrition levels, addressing the issues of wasting, addressing the issues of stunting, addressing the issue of bringing down infant mortality rates, largely all these policies and programs were focusing on the supply side. If you look at all the, you take the major programs for improving nutrition status of the population, specifically women and children. Look at ICDS, Integrated Child Development Services. Look, the whole network of Anganwadis which are set up, they provide balanced and nutritious foods to women and children. Look at midday meal scheme. They try to improve the availability of food, of the right quality and quantity of food to the population. Okay, so those are largely supply side factors, the programs and policies addressing the supply side factors, whereas the demand side factors have not been given enough attention, or the diversity of demand side factors were, and the impact was so versatile that we have not given enough attention to the demand side factors as we have given to supply side factors. There are a lot of limitations with respect to supply side factors in making an impact in the long run. Okay, so, and there is an overarching policy framework which try to integrate this demand side factors as well as supply side factors, which will try to balance between both the demand and supply side factors. So I'll show you with examples in the coming slides. So now imagine a rural household. Okay, rural household with a family. So what is their source of income? Either they can be employed in the agriculture sector, they can be a wage laborer, they can be working in the agriculture sector, earning daily wages. But then that earning depends largely on the seasonality of agriculture production. If agriculture is doing well, they'll get regular wages, and it is also seasonal also. And some sections of the households may depend on non-agricultural employment. Carpentry, masonry, building roads, construction sector. So you get employed there, and then you get your income there. A small share of the households may have their own land, on farm. Largely marginal and small holdings, which is less than 2 hectares of operational holding. They work on their own farms. They engage in agriculture production. They have their own production. They have production for own consumption, as well as if they have some surplus, they will sell it in the market and then earn their livings from that. So this is roughly roughly a cross section of a rural household where the livelihoods of the rural household is being set up. Okay, so now what are all the institutions which engage in this, which engage with a rural household and then help them engage in various economic activities so that their livelihood is set up. Okay, we have at the grassroots level, we have the Panchayati Raj institutions. I mean, the basic the basic unit of administration, which is the Gram Panchayat. And under the Gram Panchayat, if you look at agriculture production as well as non-agriculture production, I am focusing on those institutions which are largely dealing with programs, policies, and activities revolving around nutrition. Revolving around activities, revolving around programs which will help us to address the problem of malnutrition. So we have the Women and Child Development Department and its representative at various levels. Different states will have different tiers of administration, but say their representative at the grassroots level. We have from the health department all these ANMs and primary health center, which gives vaccinations, which give health checkups and all to the population. Women and Child Development Department are engaged in running Anganwadis and child care centers, and in the new Poshan Abhiyan which is going on, they have institutions at various levels which tries to address this malnutrition problem. I mean, largely engaging in monitoring it, continuously monitoring it, so that they can diagnose the problem very early and then act accordingly. And then you have the Department of Agriculture, the whole gamut of research and development happening in it, and various programs under the Ministry of Agriculture, which is being implemented through various functionaries of the Departments of Agriculture. It can be for building up irrigation facilities. It can be for using high-yielding varieties of seeds, fertilizers. It can be for activities like even for activities like in building up integrated farming systems, crop livestock integration, and all sorts of activities. So we have the departments of Women and Child Development, we have the Department of Health, we have the Department of Agriculture, and then we have the flagship program of ICDS, Integrated Child Development Services, which is largely run by the Ministry of Women and Child Development. Which runs programs like the Anganwadi centers, and you have the Ministry of Education also, the Education Department also, which runs the midday meal scheme. That's also a source of that's also a supply side program which I was discussing earlier, which provides to an extent balanced and nutritious food to a large sections of the population. Imagine if these programs were absent, what would have been the malnutrition levels in our country. So roughly this is the institutional architecture which happens at the grassroots level that engages with the rural household in its various activities and engagements, which defines their nutritional outcomes. Okay, so there are programs and policies largely from the state. There are several private sector players also, but in terms of numbers and scale, they are very minuscule. The largest player is still the state, which is engaging in agriculture sector as well as non-agriculture sector, defining the economic activities there. And then you have the Department of Education, Department of Health, Department of Women and Child Development, and the Department of Agriculture. So all these departments, either directly or through their representatives, engage at the grassroots level with the rural households to implement programs, policies, and activities which help in defining the nutritional status of the population. Okay, so this is the basic idea. Now, I have earlier talked about farming systems. we have, through research and development, we have conceptualized what we called as a farming system for nutrition approach. Let us define what is a farming system for nutrition approach. In India, there are several research organizations which has worked on this. MS Swaminathan Research Foundation has come out with a fairly robust framework on defining what is a farming system for nutrition approach, what are the components of it. They have identified, after looking at various programs, activities, and policies of different state governments and across different agroecological regions, and across geographies, north, south, east, west. They have come out with that a farming system for nutrition approach will have 6 major components. The first major components, or what you can call as critical activities. You have to survey the entire area to identify what are the main nutritional problems of that area, because as I said earlier, there are 8 states which has stunting levels among children at a much higher levels than the national average. So they will have a different set of problems than the remaining set of states. So we cannot customize or build a single model for all the regions, all the state, all the geographies. Okay, so we have to first, when we build a farming system which is going to cater to our nutritional challenges, which is going to address our nutritional problems, we have to first identify what are the major problems in that specific to that area. Okay, so a micronutrient deficiency, for example, iron deficiency in a particular region may not be a problem in other regions. So your farming system need not be a farming system which is designed to cater iron deficiency or say zinc deficiency need not be replicated elsewhere where that is not a problem. Okay, so you identify the main nutrition problem. You also have to identify a suitable agriculture-based solution for that. In certain cases, it can be an issue of unbalanced diet. A diet which is heavily biased towards carbohydrate, calories supplied by carbohydrates than absence of proteins or other things. So there you can think about integrating that with the livestock systems. You can have vegetarian and non-vegetarian sources of proteins. You can have more pulses in the cropping system, and you can have biofortified crops. I was explaining about the micronutrient deficiency earlier. In several areas of Rajasthan where zinc deficiency is a major problem, they have introduced a high zinc content pearl millet. Pearl millet is an integral part of the cropping system in arid regions of Rajasthan. So they have introduced a biofortified variety which can supply high amounts of zinc, which will to an extent address the malnutrition levels, micronutrient deficiency with respect to zinc. Okay, so for each region you have to identify that, and then the third step is to include specific nutritional criteria in the design. It can be micronutrient deficiency, it can be a balance between it can be an introduction of a diversified diet. So you have to identify what is the nutritional criteria which has to be the focus of the farming system and then integrate that. It can be merely improving small farm productivity and profitability, because that will indirectly a demand side factor which will indirectly affect the purchasing power of profitability and productivity, indirectly influences the purchasing power of the individual or the household, which can affect his ability to purchase a well-balanced, nutritious food. So that has to be one important component. Nutritional awareness, which was what we call as nutrition literacy. The knowledge and awareness about the sources and importance of various nutrients and its sources from the agriculture production systems. We also have to introduce monitoring systems. We design a farming system, and we also should keep track of whether this is contributing towards improving the nutrition, addressing the nutrition problems. Okay, so these are the 6 major components which we look at when we design a farming system for nutrition approach to address the malnutrition challenge. We survey the area to identify the main nutrition problem. We design suitable agricultural solutions. Specific nutritional criteria, it can be micronutrient deficiency or any other type of things. You include crops or production system which address that into the farming system. Improving profitability and productivity is an essential component. Awareness is very important, and then it is also important that we monitor the progress and then do corrective actions if the progress is not in the expected level. So these are the 6 components of farming system for nutrition approach. Now, I will take, we also have to talk about value chains, what is a nutritional value chains, and then how does identifying the stakeholders in the value chain and their activities, their role, and their how the value moves across the chain, tracking of how the value in what all ways are various actors integrated will help us to identify the ways in which we can integrate agriculture, which we can synergize the linkage between agriculture production system and the nutritional outcomes. So this is an example of a value chain which we did for the state of Telangana, which tracks the whole range of activities and programs focused on improving the nutritional status of the population. If you look at the bottom of this value chain, you see the yellow colored boxes which indicate the child nutrition status. You have integrated the ICDS program, Integrated Child Development Services, which provides food and services to children, vaccination and whole range of activities to improve their nutritional status. You have the midday meal scheme operating at the schools, which provides balanced and nutritious meal for children of the age group above 6 years. So 0 to 6 years is covered by the ICDS programs, and after that, when the child moves to the formal education system, it is covered by so above 6 years of age, midday meal scheme is supposed to address some of their nutritional problems. Okay, so we have the midday meal scheme and ICDS, which is largely catering to the nutritional requirements of the child. It also caters to the nutritional status of women and children. You also have the health department, through vaccinations, through provision of supplementary nutrition in terms of vitamins, iron and folic acid for pregnant and lactating mother. They also support the whole activity. Okay, and in the state you have also a fortified mix, which is known as Balamritam, which is being supplied to children of the age 7 months to 3 years of age. This is largely to address the severely and acutely malnourished children. So you have the ICDS, you have the midday meal scheme, you have the fortified food supply system, you have the health department supporting through vaccinations and other healthcare. And the case of Telangana, of an organization called Akshaya Patra, which largely supplies which largely supplies midday meal and then nutritious food to selected Anganwadis, which indicate the involvement of the non-governmental sector in that. So they assembles a lot of corporate social responsibility funding and then try to supplement whatever is being done by the government in terms of ensuring balanced and nutritious diet to women and children. Okay, and at the top level you have the implementing agencies as well as the agencies which makes guidelines and policies for implementing these activities. You have the state level project director for the ICDS program, and you have at the district level, for each district you have the district welfare officers, At the block level, you have the child development program officers who largely decides the policies and programs for implementation of these activities, as well as regulates the procurement and arranges for the procurement of materials for provision of food in the ICDS system, as well as for the midday meal scheme. So you have a very complex value chain, and if you look at what is its linkage with the agriculture production system, is largely in this area where area earmarked by the green this thing, where you have the various inputs. You have the various inputs which goes into the preparation of the meals and the fortified mix which is supplied to address severe and acute malnutrition to select age group of children. So it is there is ample scope of integrating the agriculture production system into this area in the value chain, into this range of activities in the value chain, which we'll discuss with an example later. So how much time do I have now? Around 5 minutes?
Yeah, you have some 15 more minutes, including discussions. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe another 5 to 8 minutes. I'll summarize and then.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So if you look at the value chain, these are, of the nutritional value chain, these are the actors or arena of actors where we can think about integrating, looking about synergizing the linkages between agriculture and nutrition. Now, what are the major challenges which a farming system for nutrition face, which is largely identified by experiences in different states and literature and research studies which have been carried out. The main issue which they highlight is the focus on supply side factors, largely on availability. You focus largely on the food being made available to them, but then you don't through ICDS and through midday meal schemes you make food available, but then you are not focusing on factors which in the long run make an individual or household improve his level of living or standard of living or earnings which can equip him to which will build enough purchasing power in him, in an individual or a household, to access a well balanced and nutritious diet. Okay, so you always focus on the supply side factors, which may not be sustainable in the long run. So that is one major issue with respect to this farming system for nutrition. You have this programs like ICDS, midday meal schemes are largely supply side, addressing supply side factors. And 2017-18, if you see, around 10,000 crores have been spent from the government exchequer on midday meal schemes and ICDS, purely to sustain this program. So as long as this is being supplied or pumped into the system, the schemes run. But then once they withdraw, or once there is some issue in the functioning of these programs, the whole range of ensuring all the important components for building up a well nourished or improving the nutritional status of the population gets jeopardized. So that is something which we need to be looked at. Focusing biased or largely on supply side factors. So that is one major concern which has been raised against this. Now, what all we can look at this? If you look at in the earlier value chain, nutritional value chain, where I showed what all areas where we can think about integrating agriculture production system with nutrition, with activities or programs for nutrition. at the rural level. Imagine a rural household which gets engaged in various activities. Engaged in activities for their own livelihoods as well as their own production systems. And if you define these institutions and activities and orient them towards our nutritional goals, like ultimately towards achievement of a well-nourished, malnutrition-free population. No, these are the components which we should look at. We should have a diversified farming systems which can largely address the food availability issue, availability of a diverse and well-balanced diet. At the same time, ensures productivity and profitability, which will influence the accessibility issue of building up purchasing power of those engaged in the production. The rural institutions, largely with respect to health, education, and agriculture, orients their activities towards improving the nutritional status of the population, which largely aligns with the nutritional goals. You have a large women collectives in the forms of self-help groups. Even farmer producer organizations are coming up with that. So they get engaged in diversifying the production system, as well as engaging with the rural institutions in improving various demand side and supply side factors which affects nutritional outcomes. Entrepreneurship is one important thing which can be built into these women collectives, which will help this in improving the productivity and profitability of these diversified farming systems. And women collectives, with the help of rural institutions, getting engaged in post-harvest handling of the production, which will be beneficial in terms of improving the food safety measures, reducing post-harvest losses, even good agriculture, engaging in good agriculture practices, which will affect the nutritional quality of the product. So these are some of the activities which can be thought about by integrating a diversified farming system for nutrition with the support of rural institution and women collectives in the forms of self-help groups and farmer producer organization, with the right entrepreneurship, engaged in the diversified farming systems, and then contribute towards the nutritional goals. So this can be one item which can be thought about by all of you who are rural development professionals. It's not a very simple one agent or one institution intervention. It needs intervention or integration or synergy of a large number of rural institutions, which is not very simple activity, which may not be always very simple. It's a very complicated thing, but then it's not something which can't be done. It can be done with creating the right level of awareness, creating the right level of integration of various components, integrating that into the Gram Panchayat development plan, and then convincing the policymakers and administrators about the importance of having an integrated approach like this would help us move much closer towards our achievement of better nutritional status. So because of shortage of time, I'll stop with this. I would also like to, I had planned to, there are some international experiments which is going on towards building rural institutions in this direction. One such experiment is the Brazilian school feeding model, which is largely talked about. I'll within a minute, I'll briefly introduce that. And then I'll share the materials with Dr. Ruchira, and then you can read. There is a well-documented study by Food and Agricultural Organization on the Brazilian school feeding model. You can read about it. It's very simple. What they have done is a 4-step process. The first step, they have built a farming system for nutrition which is integrated with the ongoing public procurement programs, school feeding programs, midday meal schemes. They have integrated the local rural level agriculture production system with that, and they have built institutions which help them to operationalize the whole activities. Okay, so the first step was to as in the farming system for nutrition, to identify, to plan what they have, what a balanced diet could be, and then what are the ingredients which are required for that, and then you organize the production system for that. You engage the local production, the rural households are engaged in producing that. It's a sort of employment for them, it's a sort of income for them. At the same time, it also ensures availability of diverse food products into the school feeding programs. So the farmers supply from their family farms to the school feeding programs. It's not free, but whatever the government is spending on school feeding programs is paid as a remuneration to these farmers. Once that comes, the local community is engaged in preparing the food. All activities in ensuring a well balanced, safe and quality food. Food safety is very prominent here. Safe and quality food is prepared, and then that is being fed to the children. The study shows that around 43 million children in 250,000 schools are being fed through these systems. That is one example which has happened, which has integrated the local agriculture production system, farming systems with the rural local institutions, and then aligning them with the activities for achieving a better nutritional status of the population. Okay, so I'll stop with this. If you have questions, then we can discuss. I leave the presentation and materials with Dr. Ujira. They'll be sharing with you later. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Surjit.